Look, I wouldn't call you crazy if you felt like you've been playing the exact same game for the last few years, just with a fresh $70 coat of paint and some new maps. You're not wrong. You're kind of absolutely right. Now, I'm going to get into a few things since Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 dropped in 2022. Now, if you've realized that all the games feel the same, like I said, this is a very, very real situation and a very, very real thing that I'm going to explain in this video. And I'm going to explain how we got to this point, why we're there, and why I don't think the future of Call of Duty is looking very bright, unfortunately, and why I think COD HQ may be the silent Call of Duty killer. So let's get into it. To understand why things feel so copy-pasted today, we actually have to take a look back on how things used to work. Now, historically, Infinity Ward and Treyarch were like two cooks cooking in two different kitchens, but with the same ingredients. Whereas Infinity Ward would give us that more heavy, more tactical feeling, not so hyper-realistic gunplay. They would still be very fast arcade-based shooters, which is something I'm going to get into later with modern Infinity Ward. And Treyarch would really lean into that more arcade-style, fast-paced, vibrant, and highly competitive shooter, except for World at War, but we'll get into that. Now, I would even argue today that you could blindfold new Call of Duty players, send them to the past, and they would be able to tell you that these games were made by different people. Whereas today, not so much. Whereas back then, I'd argue that sound design, general gameplay feel, just mechanics of the game would make the games feel and look and sound very distinctly different. However, today, unfortunately, that magic just seems to kind of be lost. So before I talk about the COD HQ era of Call of Duty games, I want to talk about each engine used in each Call of Duty game leading up to the COD HQ. Now, the Call of Duty original engine was built on the id Tech 3 engine, which was of course used for Quake 3. Now, it was also used for Wolfenstein, which was an updated version of id Tech 3, and that version specifically is what was used for Call of Duty United Offensive, and Call of Duty Classic. It was known as a Call of Duty branch, and then later on, Treyarch used a modified version called the Treyarch NGL for Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1 and Call of Duty 3. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Infinity Ward modified the engine and named it IW 2.0 for Call of Duty 2, which I find to be very interesting, because this started a trend of Treyarch using different versions, or I guess modified versions of id Tech 3, and then later on the IW engine, not doing the same as what Infinity Ward are doing. Now, later on for IW 3.0, which was Call of Duty 4, and funny enough, 007, which used a slightly modified version of the IW 3.0 engine, so those games probably feel very similar. I've never played this version of 007, so I wouldn't actually know. And then you also had Call of Duty World at War, which also used the IW 3.0 engine, moving away from Treyarch NGL. It used a modified version of IW 3.0. And then came Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 with IW 4.0. And then Call of Duty Black Ops with IW 3.0 again, but modified. Now, it's important to note that between World at War and Black Ops, they had modified the IW 3.0 engine twice, one for World at War and then one for Black Ops. But you're going to notice a trend here. Then came Modern Warfare 3, which was co-developed by Sledgehammer Games. They used IW 5.0. And then came Black Ops 2, which had IW 3.0 again. This time, not updated from the Black Ops version. Here's a trend you're going to start noticing. With Call of Duty Ghosts, IW 6.0 came out, which means that for every game released by Infinity Ward, they were updating the IW engine, whereas every game released by Treyarch were just using modified variants of the IW 3.0 engine, which I find very strange and very unique in their approach, and I think it has something to do with maybe Treyarch were working on different games at the time, and Infinity Ward, I believe, were exclusively working on Call of Duty, so they were able to make their own versions of their own updates to the engine, whereas Treyarch were just good at updating on what was previously there, and I suppose innovating on the gameplay and gun feel of every Call of Duty game that they were releasing. Now, after Call of Duty Ghosts, Sledgehammer Games were allowed to make their own Call of Duty game for once, and it was Advanced Warfare. Okay, looking back, everyone hates it. Looking back, I love that game. Fight me. But they used the SHG V1, which was an updated version, or I guess their own modified version, of the IW 5.0 engine. And then came Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, which used IW 7.1. But then came Black Ops 3, which once again, 3.0 engine. Then came Call of Duty World War 2, that used SHG V2, which is very interesting. And alongside that, I'm going to also mention here, instead of a little later, the SHG V1 modified engine, which was used on Modern Warfare Remastered and Modern Warfare 2 Campaign Remastered. Then came Black Ops 4, IW 3.0 again. They really, really like using IW 3.0. But they, like I said, Treyarch, even now, are very good at innovating on what Infinity Ward has given them. So they refuse seemingly to use the newer engines every time, despite them obviously being available to them. I guess it was to keep and retain the feel of their games and what they believe is their, like, I guess, signature in gameplay, which I completely understand. And then came one of my personal favorite modern Call of Duties. Fight me, everyone's hating on it right now because it got popular again. But Modern Warfare 2019, which came along with Warzone and the IW 8.0 engine. The 8.0 engine is a massive overhaul of the 7.0 engine, larger than anything we had seen before it. It changed a lot of features in terms of feel, gameplay, and everything, which I really enjoyed over a certain time period that between 2019 and like 2022 that everybody would prefer to forget about, I think. Call of Duty Vanguard, I'm going to talk about here, was a very interesting one, because if I'm not wrong, it released before Cold War. I can't actually remember, but either way, the game used IW 8.0 again. It was very slightly updated, not modified, updated. It was updated from the IW 8.0 engine, which is why the game feels so similar in terms of gunplay and multiplayer and everything else to Modern Warfare 2019. And I noticed that straight away when I was playing. I kind of felt like I was playing the exact same game, which kind of made me jaded on the experience very quickly, which is why I'm getting into the modern problem. Cold War, you're never going to guess which one it uses. And it's the last time, unfortunately. IW 3.0, however, it used a little bit of 8.0's code. So it was kind of a mismatch. I guess you could call this like, I'm going to call this 3.8 because it uses a bit of 8.0's code, I guess. It's stupid. Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, you could tell, felt different to the other games in terms of Treyarch's signature style, which I think actually did a disservice to the game, in my opinion, and made it feel a bit heavier, a bit clunkier, not so much in the same tone of Call of Duty games that I was used to from Treyarch. But now we get to IW 9.0, and of course... So, the COD HQ. To me, I would say the COD HQ was kind of the death of Call of Duty, or at least it was the harbinger of the death of Call of Duty. It released simultaneously with Modern Warfare 2, 2022 of course, and the release of Warzone 2.0. The COD HQ became the home for every single future Call of Duty release under a unified IW 9.0 engine. Modern Warfare 2 had it, of course, Modern Warfare 3 had it, Black Ops 6 and Black Ops 7 had it, but I'll get into them in a little bit. Between Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3, I'm going to kind of talk about them together, and funny enough, Warzone Mobile also actually uses this engine, which I find very interesting. But the game overall, I think, took a massive hit in terms of quality to the gameplay and movement and gunplay and everything else. Modern Warfare 3 is a bit of an exception. I actually really enjoyed Modern Warfare 3, and I'm not sure if it's because of the gameplay or just the sheer amount of content that came out for that game. In retrospect, it was ridiculous how much they dropped for that game in such a short amount of time. It was kind of like peak Call of Duty for a while, I'm not going to lie. Modern Warfare 2 to me felt very clunky, felt very messy, and you could also feel that in Warzone 2.0, which was a massive disaster when it dropped, and everybody would agree the looting system was all over the place, and they tried to take like 4 steps forward but took like 25 steps backwards. I don't know how they managed it, especially coming off the heels of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019 and Black Ops Cold War. It made no sense to me how they managed to get there, but they did. Let's talk about Black Ops 6. Black Ops 6 is a unique case. It was built on the IW 9.0 engine. Black Ops 6 introduced Omni Movement. Omni Movement obviously allowing you to sprint in every direction, move around way faster when you're prone, look around faster. It would allow you to dolphin dive in any direction. It was a really cool thing. And once again, harkening back to the fact that Treyarch are very good at innovating on what Infinity Ward give them, which is a trend that you will continue to see even to Black Ops 7. I'm not sure if it's a modified engine, but overall, the gunplay and a lot of the movement systems outside of Omni Movement feel very similar. Now, we'll talk about Black Ops 7. This game also introduced another movement change, which again, innovating on what they were given from Infinity Ward. They innovated on wall jumping, making the game feel somewhat of a midway point between Black Ops 2's gameplay and era and Black Ops 3's gameplay and era. Whereas obviously Black Ops 3 had the super hyper exo movement, which is an era I think in retrospect we'd all like to kind of forget about with Call of Duty, but you know, Black Ops 2 was peak, so fight me on that one. Whereas Black Ops 2 had none of that. It was boots on ground, but a more futuristic Call of Duty based in 2025, which is crazy to think we're actually there and beyond. And we've got nothing from those games. I don't think anyway. Maybe we do. But either way, it feels like a midway point in terms of movement between those two games. Of course, with sliding being part of it because it's IW 9.0 engine, and they want to have the unity between how it feels with Warzone. And that is the main reason all of these games were unified on one engine. It was Warzone. Don't let them ever tell you different. This isn't for unification. This isn't to make things easier for the developers. Well, I guess it kind of is for Warzone's sake. This was to make Warzone easier to port things into. Because with Warzone and Call of Duty Vanguard and Call of Duty Cold War, you could notice there was a massive difference in quality between the assets being ported between those games. Not so much with Vanguard because it was on the IW 8.0 engine and not a modified version of it, or just it was more on a slightly updated version. Those assets were pretty much 1-to-1. They felt 1-to-1, they shot 1-to-1, and they did damage 1-to-1. Whereas with Cold War, you can notice a very obvious dip in quality between the assets in Cold War and the assets in Warzone. Diamond Camo being one of the most egregious examples. Diamond Camo was one of the most hideous things in Warzone when it was from Cold War. It looked horrific. It was, people call it the glowstone camo because it genuinely looks like a Minecraft texture. It looks like the texture of a glowstone, which is crazy to me. And that is one of the reasons that they did this, because of, like I said, it became easier to port things from games that were built on the exact same framework and engine to Warzone than it was to port them from different iterations, like the IW 3.0 engine, which is what they pulled from Cold War, which is probably why the parity between quality is very different, which is crazy because I think Cold War visually is probably one of the better looking Call of Duty games, even though it's built on the IW 3.0 engine, which also harkens back to Black Ops 3, which I think is the best game visually for Call of Duty if you're going for like that cartoony, more unrealistic style. And then if you want my opinion on this one, I think Modern Warfare 2019 generally across the board is the best single looking Call of Duty game we have ever had. Even today, I don't think it's even remotely close. And this is where it also gets into a problem with me with the IW 9.0 engine, is that visually the games feel kind of identical overall. And I know, of course, aesthetically, Treyarch like to use more vibrant colors and they like to use different things, but overall there's something about it that just can't shake that feeling of just looking too similar. Even in Nuketown 2025, in like Black Ops 7, because it just looks really weird to me. I don't know what it is. It's something about like how the assets are built on the engine. I don't know why. I feel like maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I'm insane. But let me know what you guys think about that, because I want to know what your opinion is on that. I think overall that the COD HQ is a problem, a massive disease on the Call of Duty franchise and its unique identity between each Call of Duty game. Now, this is where I get into the interesting thing. In theory, the next Call of Duty game should be, by all means, Modern Warfare 4, developed by Infinity Ward. Now, it should have a new engine, or a new framework, if you want to say that. It should be the IW 10.0 engine, or maybe they call it the IWX engine. I don't know. Maybe we're in that weird trend where 10s are always X's for some reason. Roman numerals, you know? I feel like they're going to do that, and they're going to introduce a new engine, and they'll be forced to update the COD HQ. But then what does that mean for all the other games built on the COD HQ? But does Warzone get a brand new iteration? Do we get Warzone 3, like the officially Warzone 3? Because, I mean, I think so. Like, where do we go from here? Do we get something interesting happen where perhaps Blackout, the new Blackout game mode, Black Ops Royale, stays on the IW 9.0 and then the new Warzone goes to IW 10.0? I'm very interested to see what happens regarding the future of the franchise, because obviously they said themselves, Activision said, every single Call of Duty release will be on the unified engine under COD HQ. So does that mean for the first time ever, we get an Infinity Ward release that doesn't come with a new iteration of the IW engine? Now, you might say, but what about Modern Warfare 3? Not Infinity Ward. That was Sledgehammer Games. It's not a new Infinity Ward release. So, do we now see a new version of the engine? Or do we not? Do they do it for the first time? I'm super confused. I don't know what's going to happen, but either way, I want you guys to talk about this below. I want you guys to tell me, do you think that the COD HQ has been a massive problem for the franchise? Or do you think the parity between games being very similar in terms of gameplay and movement, I guess outside of Black Ops 6 and 7, but even then they still feel somewhat similar without, you know, those things. In fact, Black Ops 7 did something extra. I forgot to say, it removed tax print. It made it a perk, but it's still there. Like, it's still a feature. You can still use it. It's still within the game's files. You know what I mean? But like I said, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think it's a good thing that the COD HQ exists and that they're all under a unified engine? Or do you think this is killing Call of Duty's unique identity between developers? Sound off in the comments. I really want to hear you guys' opinions on this. I've been Jake Plays. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace and bye-bye.